A little inside baseball for you here. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. When I have guests on the show, I do not ever script questions. I try to let our conversation go where it will, and I try to listen, which hopefully I'm better at now than I was once upon a time. But I do try to think about where I would like for an interview to go. And the fact of the matter is we probably don't have enough time to get to everything with Lars Larson that I would like to get to this morning. Lars is the host of the Lars Larson Show, syndicated across the entire country. You can hear it right here on SuperTalk, Mississippi. My friend, I appreciate you making time for us on what I know is a busy day.
It's a busy day. It's a sad day. I mean, we had all planned to mark 9/11, the terrorist attacks on America. And then yesterday, right as I was on the air, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And Richard, I know sometimes talking to me it's tough to plan a course because it's like rolling a ball bearing down a highway on a hill. You don't know where it's going to go. But let me say this. I know there are going to be people saying, well, it's not an assassination. I would beg to differ. When you are killed, murdered by someone because of your political beliefs, and while we haven't yet seen the suspect caught, we want to see him prosecuted, and we can't claim to know his motivation. I think logic would tell you that the obvious reason that Charlie Kirk was targeted was because of what he says and what he stands for. He was a powerful young man. I mean, he started Turning Point USA when he was 19 or 20, and he had led a powerful organization that united a lot of Americans. And he took the approach of going to college campuses and speaking to students by the thousands like he was doing yesterday. And that's a way of persuading people to follow a certain set of beliefs and causes. And I think Charlie Kirk was fantastic. And it is terrible that he has now been murdered, assassinated, that he leaves behind a young wife and two very young children. And that is an especial tragedy.
Spencer Cox is the governor of Utah. He agrees with you. In his remarks yesterday, the first thing out of his mouth was, make no mistake about it, this was a political assassination. And I thought very eloquent remarks that he made yesterday. I'm curious. I just had Jonathan Allen on, and we talked about the book that he wrote about the presidential campaign this past year. And I told him I'm always curious about process when I talk to authors. I'm curious about your process yesterday. And I asked that through the lens of, it's about 2:30 yesterday afternoon when I found about this, and I felt like my mind was spinning until I put my head on the pillow at 1 o'clock. And again, when I woke up this morning, on, okay, how do we want to approach this? How do we want to talk about this on the air? It was happening in real time while you were on the air yesterday. What was your process?
Well, my process always, when we have something that is what we call a breaking news event, something has happened, we know very little, is to tell my audience, this has happened, this is what we know, and we will get you all the details as they become available, but I will not get out over my skis and tell you things that are not true or that I don't have nailed down flat. And my producers know, because I told them I got the word of his death that was confirmed about 1:30 my time, so about 3:30 your time. I believe, if I've done the math right, that they got in my ear, and they also wrote me a note on the screen in the middle of my notes and said, President Trump confirms that Charlie Kirk has died, because we didn't know that. I mean, we all suspected it a bit when we saw some of the horrific video. When the shot hit him, I initially thought he had been hit on the right side of his neck because his right hand reached up before he fell over. As it turns out, he was hit on the left side of his neck, and it apparently struck one of the major vessels, and there was a gush of blood that was just horrific and unbelievable. And a lot of people, I heard people on the air later last night when I was looking at some of the coverage, concluding right away that's unsurvivable. I don't believe in getting there. I wanted to wait until we knew for sure. But my focus was get the information out, tell people what's going on, and get it right.
Did the video or the multiple videos that were available that many times would be blurred out if we were in a different era, did that make this more personal? Did it cause a deeper connection with your listeners, with my listeners, with people across this country than it would have otherwise?
It might. I mean, in terms of the horrific nature of the incident, anytime you see something like that, because we're we see it in movies and fictional presentations all the time. What we don't often see is it in real life. And yet I think, Richard, you and I live in a different era now where with cameras being ubiquitous, they're everywhere.
Right.
And so when you have cameras everywhere, you're going to see events like this documented in ways that they never would have been before. That's why there is one signature video of the assassination of JFK way back in the 60s. And that today you can expect that most events that happen near or around a crowd of people are probably going to be documented this way. That makes it more real. But for an awful lot of people, the minute they heard Charlie Kirk had been shot, their first reaction was, this is somebody who you kind of knew in a very intimate way that really didn't exist in media before. I mean, there were media figures, Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite and others, Rush Limbaugh, for example, and you felt you kind of knew them. But Charlie Kirk was a guy you might have sat and watched videos of him debating with college students, and I did. And it was fantastic because you felt as though you got to know him well. As I said, I only met the man a couple of times and shook his hand because we were at events like CPAC and others where a lot of talkers go to do their broadcast. But I think a lot of Americans had a very personal connection to him. And so the assassination of Charlie Kirk came in a very personal way to all of them, and a shock. 31 years old.
Well, yeah. It really is heartbreaking, and you mentioned it earlier, the fact that he leaves a young wife and two beautiful young children behind. For those of us that are parents, is maybe the most heartbreaking piece of the entire thing. I feel like you and Charlie shared maybe an unintentional connection. One of the things that was synonymous with his events was his statement, if you disagree with me, come to the front of the line, you get the microphone first. I can't tell you how many times I have heard you say, I guess every single night on your program for I don't know how many years, naysayers go to the front of the line. The people that disagree with you, you want to talk to them first. That is an interesting connection. I don't know if it's something that Charlie heard from you years ago and decided he was going to go with, or it's just a coincidence, but it's an interesting way that the two of you, I think, are tied together.
I think it might be a coincidence, but I wish more people would emulate it. I started that in 1997 when I began doing talk radio full time. I'd come out of a tradition of reporting. And what I wanted to hear was both sides. I always thought reporters should deliver both sides to their audience. If you want to tell somebody about an issue, you've got somebody who thinks this is the best idea in the world. There's going to be somebody who thinks it's the worst idea in the world. And I want to hear both sides. And I told my producer, a young lady at the time, I said, we're going to say naysayers go to the head of the line. She said, what do you mean? I said, a lot of shows screen out anybody who disagrees with the host. So it makes it sound as though you're kind of in an echo chamber where everybody agrees with what the host says. And I said, I'm not going to be like that. If my ideas will not stand up to some tough questions, then it's time for Lars Larson to go back and rethink his ideas. And there are times where naysayers have said, hey, what about this? And I'll be honest, there have been a few times where I say, wow, I never thought about that particular aspect of a problem. And if my audience can hear that and say, the next time I've decided that this is a good idea or a bad idea, why don't I think about the alternate point of view? And I thought, I'll invite people to be naysayers. And I want my audience to hear not only the naysayer, but I want to have them hear how I answer the criticism or the critique of my position on an issue. And if I can't answer it well, they may conclude, Lars doesn't know what he's talking about on this one.
Lars, in the aftermath of September 11th, 2001, we experienced something that I don't know that we've experienced since, and that's what felt like national unity. It was fleeting, but it did feel like for a couple of months that existed. I feel like when we have a tragic event, you could almost have like tragic event bingo. And, there's certain things that you're going to hear. You're going to hear it's time to cool the temperature of political discourse. You're going to hear people talking about gun control. You're going to hear people talking about thoughts and prayers, whether it's genuine or as a punchline. It's maybe a bad way to tie these two events together. But is there a scenario where there can be a cooling of the political discourse, where we can once again find a moment, even if it is fleeting, of national unity?
I think, I'm going to tell you something. I call my show honestly provocative talk radio. And they say, what do you mean? You want to provoke people? I said, but yes, provoke them to think. And so sometimes to provoke people to think, you have to say things in a bold way. You can say them politely and civilly, but say them in a bold way. And I guess I'm tired of hearing from the other side, and there is another side in America, the side that advocates for political violence and has been for the last several years. They want us to cool down our rhetoric, while at the same time, they're advocating to get up in their face, as Maxine Waters, member of Congress, has said. Crazy things that were even said by Joe Biden and by Nancy Pelosi and by other Democrats. The squad is certainly not immune from doing that. So while they advocate for just violence, if you don't like somebody, shout them down. If they come to a local college, prevent them from speaking. And people like Charlie Kirk and Ann Coulter and Ben Shapiro and others have all faced that. I want people to think about that. Do you want to have a vigorous national debate, or do you want conservatives to cool it? I'm not in favor of cooling it. I am in favor of, and I had some people yesterday saying, we've got to do more than just vote. And I said, if you're trying to lead me down a path where you're suggesting that we should have the same rhetoric of the left, that we should go out and hurt people to get our point across, I will not go. And I told a caller, I won't go there. I don't think it's necessary. We have a country that runs based on representative government, a fantastic constitutional republic, not a democracy. It has elements of democracy in it, but overall, it is a representative form of government. And thank